Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the second week in February 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. We're breaking down some of the biggest stories in the auto industry from the past week and looking forward to what's in store in the days ahead. Joining me today are Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us at Automotive News. Money Mike, welcome back to Weekend Drive.
Thanks,
you got a new nickname.
Money.
You got a nickname this week, Mike. And
like
Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Subaru, and Mazda. Larry Legend, thanks as always for joining us.
Kel, it is so wonderful to be here. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm excited you're here, Larry. All right, guys, let's start off with some I guess, where you guys are at. Local news, I guess. The Gordie Howe Bridge. Yep. So we heard from Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins, Mish Auto's Glenn Stevens, and Greg Layson from Automotive News Canada this week on Daily Drive, all talking about what President Trump's threat means for cross-border trade. But Larry, step back for us. What does Trump's threat to block a bridge that's already built and paid for by Canada tell us about how trade policy is being conducted right now?
Well, it tells us that it's being conducted in the most petulant, irrational manner that one could come up with, right? Anybody that knows Gordie Howe knows what kind of player he was, which you would think doesn't have much to do with this bridge, but Canada's got its elbows up, and with good reason. This is a shakedown, pure and simple. Canada built the bridge. They paid for the bridge. And why did Canada build a bridge and pay for it when it crosses the border? Because the billionaire family that owns the bridge that's 2 miles up the river, the Ambassador Bridge, and is a privately owned bridge that carries most of the heavy traffic from the United States into Canada, including all the auto parts and the cars that flow back and forth. Because the family of the owners of that bridge contacted the Commerce Department and had a discussion the same day that President Trump decided to complain about how quote unquote unfair Canada was being for having the audacity to build a bridge, pay for it, put it up, open it, and not give anything to the United States. How crazy is this? Even the customs portions of this bridge, for the U.S. were built by Canada. And why? Because the United States couldn't muster the political will to do it in the face of the Maroon family. So yeah, this deserves some elbows. This deserves a stick between the legs from Canada to the U.S. Any kind of dirty shot that they want to take, we deserve it for this.
Now, Mike, what are you hearing from your sources about how serious this threat actually is?
I'm not sure that folks are necessarily taking it that seriously at this point. And it goes back to a comment I made, I think a few weeks ago on the podcast, just about how things change in a matter of hours, if not days or weeks, with President Trump. And you don't know where he's going next or what he's thinking next. And this could very well fizzle out, just like the Greenland takeover fizzled out into some sort of deal that he was able to announce that was mostly a retread of things that had already been agreed to. So I could see something similar playing out here. But folks are aware this was a question this past week during Ford's earnings call. Somebody asked the CFO if this was an issue and something they're monitoring. She said, yeah, they are. But at the same time, they can't really say how this would affect them because it's not open yet, right? So they're using the Ambassador Bridge, as Larry referenced, for everything right now. It's not like the president is taking away something that they are currently using. But I'll tell you, it could get dicey pretty quick if they're unable to use this bridge for an extended period of time. Jim Farley, Ford CEO, about a year or so ago on a podcast referenced that if the Ambassador Bridge shuts down or there's an issue, a backup, they'd run out of seats for the F-150 within an hour. Because that's, with the just-in-time manufacturing, that's how little time there is between a seat arriving from a supplier and getting put into the truck in Dearborn. So has the potential to be an issue, but right now I'm not sure it really is that much of one.
Now, Larry, nearly half of the freight crossing the Ambassador Bridge right now is automotive vehicles and parts. If this bridge opening gets delayed, what's the practical impact on the industry?
Well, Right now, probably nothing, because those, as Mike referenced, those parts will continue to flow over the Ambassador Bridge. The problem is that the Ambassador Bridge is old. It's a privately owned bridge, which seems crazy to 95% of the people in the United States, right? This is a privately owned bridge between two nations. And it, as such, it has to be cared for privately. And it's, I don't know how old is it, Mike? It's almost 100 years old, right? Wasn't it built in the 30s?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's old, right?
Right.
It's older than anybody on this podcast. That's for darn sure.
Right.
And if something happens to that bridge, we are, this industry is going to be in a jam. Let's put it that way. That's the kind way to say it. So if for no other reason than having a secondary crossing in Detroit, that was a good idea to have the Gordie Howe Bridge open, right? Let alone the private ownership. The next nearest crossing is in Port Huron, which is about an hour north or so, hour and a half north, which crosses into Sarnia in Ontario. But that, of course, if you do that, then it lengthens the trade route to get your parts delivered. Can I tell you a quick story? Mike referenced the Jim Farley's quote about the seats. Back in the Cerberus era with Chrysler, the new purchasing chief, a guy named John Campy, who came from Home Depot, thought it would be a great idea to bid out the seats for the Jeep Wrangler, right? Rebid the seats. This was in my former career at the local newspaper for the Wrangler plant. So they decide, okay, they issue a warn notice. They're going to shut the plant down, which is only about 15 miles from the Jeep plant. Campy's big idea was we're going to source these seats to India, right? Now, the way that the seats were manufactured, because they could save money getting them from India, the way the seats were manufactured, they came off the line in suburban Toledo, and within an hour they were on a Wrangler, right? He said, we're going to source these from India. And then they realized they would not have any Wrangler production for 6 months while they waited for the first ones to show up.
Jeez.
Because of this. And then they had to make sure that, they had this, they had a constant stream halfway around the world, all to save a couple bucks on their sourcing. This is how closely just-in-time manufacturing works. By the way, they abandoned that effort pretty quickly. They decided not to close the plant. Miraculously, all those folks kept their jobs. This was a good learning experience for these folks from outside the industry coming in of how just-in-time manufacturing works. So Jim Farley's right. It would cause some trouble.
Yikes. Well, guys, let's pivot to Trump's EPA repealing the endangerment findings. So this week, Trump repealed the endangerment finding this week, the scientific determination that greenhouse gases threaten public health. It's been the foundation for federal emissions standards since 2009. Mike, we've heard automakers say they need regulatory certainty to plan products, but we've also heard them complain that regulations were too strict. Now there might not be any federal standards at all. Is this actually what the industry wanted?
Probably not. And this is the same thing when you're talking about EVs or other emissions standards, that the automakers wanted some help. And they felt that some of these rules and regulations were a little unreasonable and probably not achievable. But to go ahead and sort of swing the pendulum way in the opposite direction and get rid of them completely, I think the industry generally agrees that they should have a long-term and even a near-term goal of reducing the amount of pollutants that are coming out of their products, because it's better for the planet, better for all of us. So I can't believe they agree with this, but the only thing I would say is, if you play with fire, you might get burned, right? And this, if they were advocating for some help, well, they're getting a lot of it, and probably not exactly what they wanted. So is it their own fault? Partly, I don't know about that, but they're getting more than what they bargained for.
Larry, you've been covering Toyota for years. They've been pretty quiet about this EPA move compared to other automakers. Meanwhile, you wrote this week that they're expanding their EV lineup with a familiar nameplate. The Highlander will stick around as a fully electric vehicle. What's the calculation there?
So they have been quieter about this, and that's mostly because they're a global automaker, right? They're the world's largest automaker. They make 10 million vehicles a year. They sell them all over the world. The Trump administration's greenhouse gas emissions findings, not really going to affect their product plan because they're still committed to their 2050 zero carbon promise. So they take a wider view. Let's put it that way. In terms of the Highlander, this was a decision that they made a couple of years ago, back when regulations really promoted, more EVs on the road. The transition here is that they're making with the Highlander, which used to be one of their, top selling nameplates. It was certainly their top selling 3-row nameplate. But sales of the Highlander have fallen almost 80% since 2021. A lot of that has come because they introduced the Grand Highlander, which is a 3-row crossover for people with actual legs who want to sit in the third row. It has room. It's, it solved a big product deficiency that existed with the Highlander. Moving it to a BEV platform may not even hurt its volume much. I mean, they're down to about 50,000, a little over 50,000 Highlanders a year that they're selling now, and it used to be 260,000. It's kind of crazy how much it's fallen. But I think their calculation here is they still want to have something in every segment, including EVs. They think this will help transition some folks over, and it'll pay off in the long term.
Larry, do we have a price of this EV Highlander yet?
We don't. Okay. We don't. But you can kind of figure where it's going to be based on their other crossovers. It's probably going to start in the 50s.
Okay.
Somewhere, but it's going to, be more than their other EV crossovers, which they're introducing here shortly this year. But this will be number 4, the 4th EV in their lineup.
Guys, I'm really interested in the Highlander EV specifically because this is one of those instances in the auto industry where 2 different automakers are taking 2 very different paths. Ford had been planning some 3-row EV crossovers for a while, and then they just completely scrapped them at great cost to themselves because they fundamentally do not believe that customers want a 3-row EV for whatever price point they would have to sell it at. And they mentioned data that hardly anybody uses that 3rd row anyway when they buy a 3-row EV, crossover, gas or EV. So it'll be interesting to see if Toyota has success with the Highlander EV, kind of prove Ford's thesis wrong.
Yeah, and if they don't, I don't think Toyota cares. Right? I mean, I hate to say that. They're making their money on the ICE side with the Grand Highlander, which comes in at a higher price than what the Highlander did. I think that they'll suffer through they're committed to just suffering through some low volumes on BEVs because they think long term that's where their entire lineup needs to transition to someday when the public is ready and infrastructure is ready, etc.
All right, guys, coming up, Larry virtually piloted a Joby air taxi recently. We'll hear how that went next on Weekend Drive.
Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Larry Velaquette and Michael Martinez. Larry, you visited Joby Aviation in California this week, the air taxi startup that got nearly $900 million from Toyota. And you got to fly one of their air taxis in their flight simulator. Please tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So whenever anybody in my family or somebody says, "Oh, you really like your job, don't you?" These are the days that I point to, right? I have wanted to learn to fly literally since I was in my teens, which is, as you guys keep reminding me, was a long time ago, right? So it's always been a dream of mine. I've done the discovery flights. So I got an opportunity to climb into Joby Aviation's flight simulator. Now, this is an electric air taxi, right? It has 6 motors, 6 big rotors on it. Instead of a quadricopter, though, right, it has 6, but it also has a giant wing. And these 6 motors they allow the vehicle to take off and land vertically, but then they transition for forward flight. With the wing, it flies a lot like an airplane, like a small airplane. It's 5-seat. There's a pilot and then 2 rows for 4 passengers. And the idea is this is an air taxi which would operate, say, like the flight that I took between Kennedy Airport in New York and the financial district. So I got a chance to sit in this thing and fly it virtually. And I got to tell you, it's one of the most intuitive things I've ever flown. It was super easy. Everything was kind of automated for you. I kept it on course, making little course corrections most of my virtual trip as I flew over Brooklyn and then over the East River. It was tremendously cool.
Now, what about Toyota's role here? Why is the world's largest automaker putting nearly $900 million into air taxis? What's in it for them beyond just an investment?
Well, it's certainly the investment is a key component, right? This is a startup. They have a stake. They're also, interestingly enough, though, what they're working on in addition to the money, they're on site helping this startup company develop its industrialization processes, right? They're training them in the Toyota production system. They have engineers on site. They have folks back in Japan who are making actual, supplies for this vehicle, helping them with some dedicated manufacturing prowess for the assembly of these vehicles. What's in it for them is their dream of, shared mobility, what they say. But, automakers, people will always forget about the scale of this industry, right? We are in a lot of stuff. The auto industry is. We get involved in a lot of stuff. And some of it works out and some of it doesn't. They're just hoping this works out. And if it does, I mean, the founder of Joby Aviation, he has a saying that his mission is to save 1 billion people an hour a day with these things. Now that's a pipe dream. It's a long way off. They're not anywhere close to having the kind of volumes. That's their mission down the road, right? They want to be able to get people, at least some people, save them, get them off the road, and get them through the air and get them to where they want to go faster.
Now, Mike, from your perspective, we've seen so many EV startups struggle or fail over the last few years. Rivian, Lucid, Fisker, they all discovered that building vehicles at scale is incredibly hard. What are the parallels here with Joby?
Well, I'm sure building whatever it is they're building is incredibly hard, but I'm just gonna pour some cold water on this for a second. I know I'm not as seasoned as my colleague here with my time in the industry, but I think I've been in it long enough to learn that whenever automakers are involved in things beyond automaking, it really doesn't end well. You go back to the early 2000s with Ford and the Think brand. They had that golf cart, right? And that small electric city car. They got into scooters. They bought the Spin electric scooter company. GM tried to get into e-bikes. They had a car share service called Maven. All those pretty much failed, or they sold them off. Not to mention the autonomous vehicle subsidiaries and tie-ups that they invested in and ultimately didn't pan out. So yeah, it's cool. And I'm kind of jealous Larry got to do that simulator, but I don't know if Toyota's investment is going to pay off here. I think we've found time and time again that automakers pour money into non-core things like this, and it doesn't really work out.
Yeah, he's right. You forgot Chrysler's intervention with GEM, right? That was a golf cart and an expanded golf cart operation back in the early teens. Oh, there are, Mike's right. There are a bunch of these.
Because this sounds like a whole bunch of really bad ideas that I have never heard of before that I feel like got swept under the rug very fast.
Yeah, but I will say Toyota's not the only automaker in this space right now.
True.
Stellantis, Hyundai, yep. Mercedes-Benz, they're all experimenting with quote unquote air mobility. And I'm still waiting for somebody to give me a good, solid business explanation for what mobility is, right? That we have to chase it with billions of dollars. But that's a topic for another day. I think this is probably a I don't know that this will work out. I don't know that the economics of it will work out. It's still an air taxi, and it's still going to be very expensive because it's going to be, these are limited numbers. It's a heavily, heavily regulated industry. I mean, auto is regulated. Aviation is super
Next
regulated,
level.
right? Next level regulations.
Larry, how long would it take for an air taxi to get from Detroit to Toledo?
Probably at 120 knots, probably 15 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can come into the office more often. It'd be nice to see you.
Nah. See, that's why the economics don't work out, Mike.
my thing is, I don't know if one of you should do this or we should just bring them on the show, but we need to bring someone from the FAA into automotive news and interview them about this aviation mobility thing of how realistic it is. Because I remember CES last year where they had all the flying planes and stuff, and that was like the thing last year and the year before. That was like the big thing. And I'm like, how, like no, like there's no way that they're gonna just let people just maybe at a certain altitude, but like when you start getting 20, 25,000 feet, now you're getting in passenger jet territory, right? So I'm like, how do you even think that you would allow something like this? Do people have to fly, under 15,000 feet? I just have so many questions, and I feel like we should bring someone from the FAA on, because you see these companies with all these investments that want to get into this space. But like you guys said, how realistic is it?
Yeah, well, I should point out here that the Joby vehicle is non-pressurized. It would probably fly lower than most general aviation aircraft, right? So you're probably talking max 5,000
Got
feet.
you.
Max. Because these are going to be short runs. It's got a range of 100 miles, and it's got a top speed of 200 miles an hour, right? Mm. So that means the max you're going to do is a 50-mile trip, at top speed. And those two things, you can't, in other words, you're not going to run 200 miles an hour for 100 miles because that's not the actual range. You can go 200 miles or you can go 100 miles or you can go 200 miles an hour, just like an electric car, right? If you put a tow hitch on the back of your Tesla, what happens to your battery, Kel?
Drains very fast. That's why there's no hitch on the back of my Tesla.
Yeah, exactly. So, I keep reminding myself, though, to add a little perspective. This is especially true with electric cars. We are still in probably the bag phone era. We're maybe at the end of the bag phone era, maybe to the flip phone era.
I was gonna say we're flip phone era. I think we're past the bag phone. I think we're flip phone.
We in the Motorola StarTAC era,
or the car phone with the long. You remember how the old BMWs had the car? My uncle had one. The car phone with the long cord. We might be there, or the brick phone.
Yeah, well, those predated the StarTAC by several years.
This is true. So yeah, maybe we are StarTAC then.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jim Farley's metaphor better. We're in the second or third inning of a 9-inning game.
All right. That's fair.
He's got a baseball hat on.
We'll let him live. Mike, Larry, always a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Cal, you have a good weekend, bud.
Thanks, Cal.
You too, Mike.
That's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on the Gordie Howe Bridge dispute, the EPA's endangerment finding repeal, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back on Monday for a conversation with Maria Anholt, CEO of Electrobit, about how the auto industry faces economic and technological pressure to deliver products and features faster.
We are so squeezed between economical, technological, organizational pressure for getting everything much quicker at a better cost. So everything that we can do to speed up the development, to reduce the cost, to enable people to run faster is a goodie. It's a good thing for the customers.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.